it's so expensive for companies to acquire new clients, right? So why would you not choose a much cheaper strategy that binds people longer to you? So that's trust.
So then what's the best way to figure out your archetype?
So Dove is the pinnacle example of a caregiver brand. Nike is what's called the hero archetype. It's like, just do it. It's empowerment. You are the hero. You can do this. Like, do you actually know who you're creating for? And if you do know, do you have the systems in place or the foundation in place to actually follow that through on a consistent basis?
Hi, I'm Michael from Modular Agency based in Taipei. This is Vanessa, PM at Modular.
Hi.
We're here with Roel Cruys. I said that correct?
Perfect.
From the Netherlands. Roel is a communications consultant, and he's consulted for over 50 sustainable companies. He's also started a community of artists here in Bali in the middle of the pandemic when people were craving communication. And he's worked with some really famous companies, really big companies. And what we're going to learn today is how to use communications to grow a business and why it matters. And so thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you, Michael,
for making time for us.
Thank you.
So one of the things I really want to know is what's your background and how did you get started as a communications consultant?
All right, so I won't go in all the way until the beginning of time, but so my background is in sustainability, first sustainable tourism, BA, and then a master's in global environmental management. But I've always liked writing. Even as a kid, I was having little poetry books, and over the years, I just found through multiple experiences of my life that communication is just a building block for trust. And when you have trust, you can make shit done. Excuse my friend. You can make things happen. So I guess when you're young and people tell you like, hey, you're really good at that, you should pursue that. And I just had a lot of people constantly tell me like, you're really good at writing, you should do something with that. And it took a couple of years to actually believe that and to then carry it forward. And started as a copywriter and then grew in over the past 10 years, 11 years in communication consulting, where it's more strategic and setting out communication strategies. Yeah.
Okay, and these big companies, I assume they pay you decently enough for your services, which means that you're adding value to them in some way. So why do businesses need communications? And can a business grow through good communication?
Absolutely. I'd like you to imagine this. Imagine a website of any product or service. Now imagine a blank page and just a buy button. Who's going to buy that? Unless the product is somehow so hot and such a necessity for people to actually buy. I mean, an Apple sells itself, I'm not talking to a technology company, but an actual apple in the store, if you're food sells itself. But you need words in order to convey emotion, in order to convey what it is you're trying to communicate and trying to sell. Right? So I think, communication is one of the starting blocks for trust. And with trust, I mean, would you rather have customers who trust you or customers who don't trust you? Okay, how can you foster trust? I think it's good, honest, clear communication, specifically in a tone of voice that matches the values that the ideal client resonates with.
So you're talking about marketing communications, not like internal communication.
Oh, the company. There's both ways. I mean, I've also been in positions where I've led my own teams or grown my own teams, and then you definitely look at how internal communications are handled for sure. But marketing communications is my main thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here. Okay, so it sounds like your expertise is in fine-tuning the message, marketing communication message. Right?
Yeah, it's basically. In a short pitch, I help sustainable brands find a voice.
Okay. So what is a challenge that sustainable brands, or let's just say any brand, what is a challenge they have in which they find themselves kind of stuck and they need to talk to you?
Yeah, what I often find is companies that are launching a product or a service, and they have these branding guidelines, and they have a clear view on what their product is and the benefits or the features of it. But how does that actually solve a problem in a client's life or in a customer's life? And can you convey it in such a way that it actually builds curiosity and builds a buying intent? And so building that bridge between the values of the customer and the values of the company or the product or the service that they're offering, that's where I come in.
Okay. And what do you think is the reason brands struggle with this? Because they're the ones who, they're in there every single day doing marketing or doing branding. And why do you think they struggle to communicate their products, selling points?
It depends on how is a product developed. Is a product developed because it was brainstormed in a boardroom in terms of like, that's the next product line that we should come up with, and then they're trying to make it fit with a customer persona, right? So, or is a product designed with a client in mind? So that's a major difference. And usually, startups start with the client in mind. Bigger brands start with an idea of who the client is and create a whole product line in line with that. And so then you have like little gaps with like, they're close enough, but are they close enough to really, reach the masses? Yeah.
All right. So you talked about like the landing page example. You might help with the slogan or the landing page copywriting, right? Can you tell us what are the main channels where marketing communication has to be like really precise, besides, let's say, just a landing page?
Right. For me, the focus is newsletters.
So you've kind of niche down and focus.
Yes, for sure. If you look at, for instance, social media, where brands are basically screaming into an echo chamber, trying to get a sliver of attention from people. Right? Imagine how we're scrolling through our devices and like how short of a time span we dedicate to a brand or to an ad. Now, see a newsletter. If you create a newsletter that has enough value for people to actually open and not spam it full with pictures and click here and buy here, but actually deliver value in a newsletter, then you already have your customer pool right where you want them. So the idea is to actually deplatform your potential customers, get them off your social media and into your newsletter.
What do you mean by deplatform?
So taking them off Facebook, off Instagram, or guide them towards your newsletter, and show them that in that little moment of attention that you could give to those masses that are scrolling through you, guide them to something of value that you can offer in the newsletter.
So they'll spend more time in your ad, in your newsletter. Yeah.
I would say like I hardly know anyone who doesn't open their email at least once a day. Mm. So and the people that reach you, it's not like Instagram where there's 50 or 100 unseen stories. Mm-hmm. There's probably 10 emails, or if you're wildly successful or unorganized, there's 50 emails. But I'd say like the amount of emails that come in are quite small. Oh. And so if you have that attention, can get them there.
Yeah, I've heard guys like Neil Patel and these guys say email is one of the best places to share your message because just like you said, people check it every day. I know myself, I read one newsletter every single time it comes, which is Noah Kagan's newsletter, and whatever he puts in there, I start clicking on it or I start buying it. And I've never actually analyzed that behavior for myself, but for some reason, I skip all the social ads and I kind of I'm like, oh, Noah Kagan wrote something. I'm going to check it out,
Yeah. Oh, can you remember, like, what was the first instance that you actually subscribed to his newsletter?
That's a good question because it's just like through his YouTube or through something in the funnel, I ended up happily putting in my email address because he offered something of value that I wanted.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is the thing. So can companies deliver value upfront? I meet a lot of companies that, especially when they're larger, when you're looking at corporate companies or larger tech companies, and they have like, okay, here's an ebook, but subscribe with your email address. My advice would almost be, don't do that. Like, give the value upfront, but share like, hey, subscribe on the email, and you're going to get that ebook in the email itself. So I think like the idea is for companies to start giving more value upfront and seeing what is their expertise. And if you're expert enough as a company, it will reflect in the people that you're drawing.
Right.
Build trust, I guess. Yeah.
Build trust, and that's how you build trust again, right? So Keegan and for me it's Justin Welsh and Josh Spector, and these are two guys that are heavy on email marketing, or even Daniel Thrussell, but that's like, he has like a crazy method for it. But these guys I trust because they deliver value constantly, and it's just in my inbox. And, yeah.
Right. So there's all kinds of ways to deliver value, and I think that right now it's kind of like there's a consensus that marketing has to deliver value. We cannot just keep giving discounts or features and benefits. What do you think is the best way to deliver value, especially if it's not obvious? Like, our clients, a lot of them are B2B tech companies, right? Software, machinery. Sometimes it's not very sexy stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is sexy. Like, we also work with PC companies. So do you have a methodology for how you deliver value?
That's really dependent on each case. And so I'm sorry, that's a dull answer, but it's kind of the thing, because then you look at what have they already produced, what do their services and products actually look like, how can we dive in and create thought leadership pieces on that? Let's say if you want to deliver value up front, what customer cases can you talk about? Everybody loves a good story. So what are the good stories that you can tell about client X buying service Y, and not because they bought the service, but because it actually helped them in their business?
So speaking of stories, could you tell us a story maybe of a client you worked with, and somehow they were just in a bad situation, and then through clear communication, whether it's marketing? No, I think we're going to stick to marketing communications. Sure. Or probably later we can talk about internal communications, how that works. But how you help them turn it around? Or maybe you can just share like a general bad place that clients find themselves that then they need to fix.
One of the main problem that they have, and how you are able to fix it.
Okay. Yeah. It's a good one. When I was more heavy into copywriting pieces, the questions that I would get a lot is to rewrite a vision or a mission page, because companies come up with these vision statements that are like 5 lines long, and you're kind of like, you're lost halfway. What are they actually doing? Especially when it comes to bigger tech companies, it's like, wow, if you're working with a SaaS company, okay, you need to explain how that product fits the market. You also need to explain it to somebody that's not familiar with the market. So it becomes quite difficult how to still condense that. So I have a lot of companies that reach out to me. One SaaS company, it's this one wasn't operating specifically in the sustainability sphere, but this was they're based in Europe. They're called Vinci Tables, and it's basically a software platform for hotels and restaurants to streamline and optimize bookings coming in, and let's say restaurant orders or even restaurant reservations or hotel bookings. So this was an interesting challenge because they were heavy on the technology part. The technology served a lot of benefits for restaurateurs or hoteliers. But the hospitality industry is one of not of technology, but one of people, right? Would you want a robot? I mean, this is biased, but would you want a robot serving you a delicious 10-course meal that is conveyed with emotion, or would you want, a server that is actually knowledgeable in their craft, right? So you go for the human option. So how can you still bring these two together? And so this was a case where Fortunately, my own background kind of helped because my father was in the hotel industry, bounced around in a lot of different countries and lived in a lot of different hotels actually as a kid. So I got an idea of like what is meant with hospitality, but then can you still combine it with
Tech.
with tech? Yeah. So in this sense, they didn't know how to convey their mission or their vision or their mission page properly, and they asked me to come in, and for me it was obvious how to gel those two worlds. Yes.
So I'm curious, is it better for a company to have one big vision? Because you mentioned they have 5, and probably it's too much for people to digest.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like that they have 5 visions, but there's like the vision. Like usually a company has like a vision page or an about us, and it's like, this is what we do, and this is what we stand for, and this is our purpose. But that tends to be quite long. Again, especially in tech companies, because they're operating in niche markets. So in that sense, like I help companies simplify that.
Oh, simplify.
Simplify and I would say maybe humanize the content.
Yeah, one of the things that we see often, especially with my clients, they want to focus on benefits and features, and sometimes they'll just send me a spec sheet and it'll be like, do the copywriting for this.
Right.
And so this is something that comes from like the Taiwan manufacturing tradition, many years of being one of the world's big manufacturers. And so what we want to do is we're trying to help them to turn this around and come up with their own vision and values and represent more than just the features and benefits. So for those companies, as you say, tech companies now, they niche down a lot. Do you have a sort of a framework that you can leave us with for how to connect your features and benefits with something bigger than that? That could maybe cut to, go straight to the heart of the customer.
Yeah. Good question. One of the frameworks that I often use, and I'll give you guys the link, the book link. It's what's it called, The Hero and the Outlaw. It's a book by Carol S. Pearson, and there's many frames of reference on this, but it's based on Jungian archetypes. So Carl Jung, one of the most famous psychotherapists in modern history, he came up with archetypes that are living in our subconscious or our subconscious collective. And what happens is brands can actually mimic an archetype. So let's say I'll give you a clear example. There's this archetype called the caregiver. What words come up when you think of a caregiver? And you think of
somebody that understands other people's needs and can anticipate their next needs. Let's say it like that.
So yeah, if you think of a caregiver, and let's think of your mother, for instance, like, how does a mother treat a child?
Yeah.
It's soothing, it's welcoming, it's warm, it's trustworthy, it's safe. Now look at the brand Dove. So I think they're a Procter & Gamble brand, but might be Unilever. So Dove is the pinnacle example of a caregiver brand, right? So no matter your body shape, no matter your background, we'll hold you and we'll give you nourishing products. So the framework that I use with the archetypes is to look at brands and go like, okay, from which archetype are they operating, or even a product, from which archetype is that product operating from? What is the message that it's trying to convey? Even if you're just looking at features and benefits, you can deduct who is it for and how will that solve that person, is it that making that person more empowered? So let's say Nike is what's called the hero archetype. So it's like, just do it, it's empowerment. You are the hero, you can do this. And so everywhere in their copy and in their marketing material, it's that archetype that just rises to the surface.
So then what's the best way to figure out your archetype? I mean, let's say you're doing something in tech, software, or even hardware, gaming, PCs. How do you basically figure out your archetype?
Ask really good questions. Ask deep questions. Ask questions to your clients. Ask questions to your sales team. Like also, like, who's selling the stuff, because they're often in front of the person who's actually buying it. So they get a good idea of like, how is this product or service actually helping people? And then you get an idea of like, okay, well, what do you need in terms of how does it help you, or
How does it make your life better?
how does it make your life better? Yeah,
Product, because obviously, because you're spending your hard-earned money on it.
exactly.
So you find that there's value in this product. So,
Yeah. How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel like cared for? Does it make you feel empowered? Does it make you feel inspired? Or yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I actually read the book that Carl Jung wrote. It gives differing. He mentioned how you differentiate all these personality types and how you can learn to communicate with them. And after reading that book, it helps my life a lot. Like to learn who I'm communicating with, are they a sensing type or intuitive type? And it's really different the way they think. So yeah, I think it's really good.
Cool.
Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind right now, I mean, this is obviously great to ask questions to your customer. But is this something that a big brand that's selling something like B2C, like a big brand selling keyboards, for example, computer keyboards, should they just go to their customers, as many as possible, and ask them questions to learn about it?
Yeah, I wouldn't launch a product in any market without knowing if there's actually a need for it. Right. How do you figure out if there's a need for it? You ask people. So where do you find the people that are in the field that you want to launch a product? You look at where your competitors based, or where do your people actually show up? You know, where they hang out. Do they hang out like if they want keyboards? Okay, they might not be in a co-working cafe because they might be at home, you know, but
right.
Okay, but where do they buy their stuff? And so then, yeah, it's market research. It's figuring out is there a clear need for this product, and then beyond the obvious, how is this serving them? Like, how is that optimizing someone's life or enriching someone's life?
Okay, so it sounds like the framework starts from the market research, asking questions, creating the archetype. Now, is this something that you would write down, like, for example, Dove, and then you'd write down their archetype as a guide?
Yeah. So I would create guidelines, also like tone of voice guidelines, because like apart from having the archetype, then you also have a color palette that would match that. So like copywriters tend to work very closely with designers because it's like, you know, it's like how you say something and how you show that you say something. They gel very well together, and they're important together. So it's like looking at the brand archetype, looking at the color palette, and how as a brand you're showing yourself, and then it's the tone of voice. How are you actually speaking to your customer? And for that, they ask me often to write a guideline, because otherwise, like, I want to come in, I want to help them, I want to give them the structures and the foundations, and then I'm out again. Because otherwise they'll be hooked on me, and that's a symbiotic relationship that I don't want to get into. But yeah, so it's like writing these guidelines so that the next person, the next copywriter or the marketeer can look at it and go like, okay, this sales copy, does it match with how we're actually speaking to our clients or not? Yeah.
Okay, and then why do you think that's so effective to go through this process? And actually, I am familiar with this process, but I don't know too many companies that actually spend the time to do it. Right. So can you explain is there a resistance to going through this process? And if a company does go through this process, what do they stand to gain from it?
I think like what do they stand to gain is clarity. Is like clarity and a foundation. Like regardless of which products or services that company is going to launch, or if they're in a down market or in an up market, they have a foundation of who they are. Mm-hmm. And if you know who you are and you are able to express it in the proper way, then clients are going to see that as well. We love recognition. We want to understand something in order for it to trust, right? So I can't trust a brand that's doing one thing, like let's say Apple, that's like has this clean, white gray hues, has a certain brand, it has a certain image, the way it speaks to its customers. Now, if they were like tomorrow do something completely bold the opposite way, then is that still connecting with people? No, because it's probably connecting to a different type of person. So consistency is key. Consistency for a brand is key. And I think the best way to deliver consistency is to have a solid foundation where you can always fall back on. If you have one brilliant marketeer or one brilliant salesperson come in and do their own little thing, but without setting the framework for somebody else to actually see what they did, then your company is gonna do that, right? So you want to do that.
So it sounds like it starts from communications, then the guidelines, then consistency, then trust. So the end goal is trust, right?
Right. Yeah.
To gain trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. Like you want to have you somehow, like, of course it depends. Like if you're an S&P 500 multinational, it's very difficult to create trust because the hierarchy is so big. Like you have this weird concept of like Apple. I don't have a personal relationship with Apple, but if Apple sets their foundation well, then I can walk into any Apple store and I will feel at home because the way that people speak to me, because of the language used, right? So, and that's all set in place.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Apple's worth $2 trillion now.
Exactly. So,
So basically, when you establish trust, you can grow business.
what's the what's the cheapest way to sell products and services? And it's through retention, right? And it's so expensive for companies to acquire new clients, right? So why would you not choose a much cheaper strategy that binds people longer to you? And so that's trust.
Yeah, 80 or 90% people that use Apple, they will not choose other brands after they use Apple.
Yeah.
They trust the quality. They know what the company does for them. Yeah.
I hate to admit that I'm one of those people because
Me too.
I'm always fighting for the underdog, but somehow I know Apple is so big and I still like buy their stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have an Apple. I don't have an iPhone. I have a MacBook, but I don't have an iPhone yet. So retention ultimately for a business, I would say why do you want to be in business? Because you want to optimize someone's life, or you want to enrich someone's life, whether that's B2C or B2B. And once you've done that, what then do you want to do? Ultimately you want to establish a relationship. You want to build a relationship with somebody over time. I was reading the statistics on sales calls, so cold sales calls. So it takes a consumer on average 8 touch points with a brand to make an informed decision whether they want to buy them or not. Yeah. Most cold call sales agents stop after 1 or 2 follow-ups.
Oh yeah.
So 99% of that, there's a gap. There's a market opportunity. Well, it's 99% because people just want to know what your brand is about. So give them more touch points, and you can do that through ways of giving value up front.
Okay. Can you leave us with a tip, or let's say 1 to 3 tips on how we can maybe start this process of improving communication and ending up with trust and then building that relationship with customers?
And so a tip for companies or for you guys, or for
let's say for brands. Yeah.
Okay. For brands is to have a good look at your foundation. Like, do you actually know who you're creating for? And if you do know, do you have the systems in place or the foundation in place to actually follow that through on a consistent basis?
So foundation will be their vision and mission.
Is their vision clear? Is their market clear? Like, is it clear? How are they actually serving people? Is their brand archetype clear? So in terms of like, do they convey the right message both in imagery and in communication? And then do you have the systems in place to follow through with consistency?
Okay, I mean, I think that's pretty much like once you figure that out, then you can scale up to, you know, Apple's level over a long enough time.
If the market is, if your market
is there, yeah.
Yeah, but one of the first questions that I usually ask when I'm working with a new brand is like, do you guys have branding guidelines in place? Do you have tone of voice guidelines in place? Like, just to see, like, where are they? If the answer is no, then all right, okay, then I have a starting point. The answer is yes, we can look at, okay, then where's the gap with what they're saying? And
Yeah.
All right, Roel, that's fascinating stuff. I mean, I can geek out about this stuff for hours. But I think, this is something that it's such a big job, and I think a lot of people kind of focus on the short-term gains, that they forget to build their foundation, and they forget to kind of like plant the seeds for the tree to grow really tall, right? So I think, what you provide, this is a huge value, and cool. Thanks a lot for sharing.
Yeah,
all this stuff. And so how do we get in touch with you?
So I've started a website, roelcruys.com, and actually that's also where I'll have a launch kit for ethical brands and solopreneurs to get going with like these first products and services that they're offering.
Okay, we'll link to your website in our video.
Sweet.
And and so that's it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
So we'll see you in the next video.